All right, good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are doing good on this Tuesday. Hope you had a good holiday yesterday. And we are hitting the ground running with off-season talk because the Seahawks have already started making some moves. And these moves are not big. These moves are not earth-shattering. These moves are not altering the path of this team going into the 2023 season, but they are moves, and I want to talk about them for a little bit here, and I want to explain exactly what these moves represent, too, because this is definitely a part of the NFL calendar that a lot of fans don't think about that much, and honestly rarely amounts to anything significant, but occasionally it does. So I'm going to dive into it a little bit here. We have this tweet from Aaron Wilson listing a collection of players the Seahawks have signed to what is called a reserve future contract. So, what is a reserve future contract? Let's spend a little bit of time talking about that first. So, I got this article here from Bleacher Report, which basically goes into some detail about NFL futures contracts. And the explanation is basically it's the same as a normal contract, except it will not take effect until the free agency period starts. The league year rolling over in mid-March. So they don't count against the salary cap of the 53-man limit of the current season. It's basically saying, hey, we're going to sign you, but you're not going to make any money off the salary cap for the season we just had. You're going to be on the salary cap of the upcoming year. So the contract is signed. The contract is good, but the contract also doesn't kick into effect until 2023 season actually starts in mid-March. So it counts against the 90-man camp limit, not the 53-man of the regular season. So that's why you're able to sign a lot of different players who you know have very long odds to ever contribute to your team, because you are basically saying, we are signing you, but you're not actually signed until the start of the next season. So any player that gets signed on a future contract cannot be signed by another team. And the only players who are eligible to be on a futures contract are players who were either not on a team or on a practice squad at the end of the season. So basically, this article defines it pretty well when they say it's players who aren't really that good, but they're interesting. So if you have a guy who you really like having on your practice squad, if you have a guy that you really think could blossom into at least a special teamer the next year, but you don't want to sign them on your current roster because you're already filled, or you know that there's a strong possibility they're just not going to be anything, then you give them a futures contract. And the players that get the futures contracts are typically so not in the spotlight of NFL attention that they will happily take that futures contract. Any kind of money coming in that, is more than zero is relevant to them, basically. So, yeah, that's basically what a futures contract is. It's just a way to basically earmark a player that you want to have around when camp starts, but also don't want to commit immediate money or a real roster spot to. Most teams sign several players to futures contracts the day after or a couple days after their season ends at the end of the regular season or the playoffs. So the players that the Seahawks offered future contracts to not offered, signed to, are Greg Island, Chris Garrett, Gerard Hewitt, Cade Johnson, Jalen McKenzie, Chris Steele, Darwin Thompson, Connor Weddington, and Aesop Winston. So there are some names here that we know, and there are a couple that there are a couple here that I don't. I got to be honest. Like Chris Garrett, never heard that name before. Jalen McKenzie, no. In one ear, out the other, never heard that one before. Chris Steele, that one I don't know. But most of these guys we've at least seen on the roster, and a few of them we've seen play. Greg Island was somebody I was looking at as a practice squad offensive lineman for the team long term. Somebody who would never make the active roster in all likelihood and would hopefully never play because he's a tackle, but he can't really move that well. So maybe he could be guard, but I don't even know about that. He's, you know, a low-level player in the NFL, but he's nice to have around. And you never know what he could develop into. So Greg Eiland's going to stick around, probably end up being a practice squatter in 2023. Gerard Hewitt, I believe he's played a little bit in a game. I think at the end of 2021 he played a little bit. I mean, he didn't do much, but he didn't play much. But he's a defensive lineman. Sure, why not? The big one, though, on this list would be Cade Johnson, because Cade Johnson actually played. Cade Johnson actually made some plays at the end of the year in Week 18 and the playoff game against the 49ers. He actually did stuff. Over the last 2 games the Seahawks played, he had a grand total of actually 5 catches. And I've had an eye on Cade Johnson ever since we picked him up in UDFA a couple years ago, and I've always wondered, is he going to realize his talent and ability as a slot receiver in the NFL? And it's too early to say. He's got 5 catches in his career, counting the postseason, so I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh, we've got ourselves a slot receiver for the next decade. But I like having him around, and I'm happy to see that he's at least going to be around on the 90-man when the season rolls over. So that's cool. I like that. Darwin Thompson is also a reserve receiver. I don't believe he's ever done anything in an actual game. He's another guy who's basically a permanent fixture on the practice squad. We've also got Connor Weddington, who I remember from a couple years ago we picked him up. Thought maybe he was going to turn into like a third down back or special teams returner, and then he didn't make the team and nothing ever came of it. But it looks like he's at least going to be around. I think he actually got signed by the XFL, so at this point I suppose he's not actually going to be playing in the XFL if he's got a futures contract with the Seahawks, unless there's some kind of an arrangement where a player can play in the XFL and still be in the NFL, which I doubt. That sounds like that would be trouble, potentially. But yeah, Connor Weddington could still be a contributor on special teams. I mean, we need a punt returner, and there's going to be at least a little bit of room in the backfield this offseason because we do have a couple outgoing free agents. You've also got Aesop Winston, who that name has been thrown around a little bit. We haven't really seen anything from him yet, but he was somebody that people were buzzing about a little bit in the preseason and in training camp as somebody who might be able to one day make an NFL-level contribution. I don't know too much about him other than that his name is very memorable, but those are the reserve futures contracts the Seahawks have signed players to. So basically, these guys will be on the 90-man when the offseason starts. Now, just because these guys get signed to these futures deals doesn't guarantee them anything. They absolutely could be released very early in the process. No guarantee they make it to the preseason or final cuts or anything. But it's a good start for a lot of them, and for most of them, it's about as good as they could hope. They're probably relieved that they'll at least be around an NFL team to start the offseason. So, yeah, that's about all I got to say. I know that the only, notable name on this list really is Cade Johnson. So, the other guys, I don't know if we'll ever see them make NFL contributions, but Cade, it's believable. He's at least got to be more productive than John Ursua was, right? He's already caught 5 passes, Ursua caught 1. All right, I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Those are your futures contracts for the 2023 offseason. See you guys later. Go Hawks.